I was born with a strange gift. The ability to see what no human being has ever seen before. It's all mixed up in my head. The images, the sounds, the smell. I need to remember. Put things in order right up to this moment. Remember who I am. If I had to say how it all began, I might just as well start here.
All right, Nathan's waiting for us.
After the universally praised Heavy Rain, Quantic Dream is back with an all-new interactive movie, more or less. This time around, players take on the role of Jodie Holmes, a very special girl that is humanity's only link between our world and, well, something else. Her companion is a spiritual creature named Aiden, and through the use of both characters, players live out a good chunk of Jodie's life to uncover not only her past, but where she's going and what makes her just so special. Similar to Heavy Rain, the story is an integral part of the game, and I found it to be very interesting, even if it can be a little bit unfocused at times. The game begins with a little girl being tested by a couple of scientists. She has an invisible friend named Aiden, who just so happens to be, well, real. As players slowly make progression, the focus changes from Jodie as a little girl to her as a rebellious teenager, all the way through her FBI training and eventually to her being on the run for some unknown reason. The more involved the story gets, the more interesting it actually becomes. This is ultimately a story of one frightened child becoming a confident woman, learning to accept her place in this strange world. Ellen Page's performance is utterly fantastic and is clearly the main reason you'll want to play Beyond Two Souls. The downside to the story is the way the 20 chapters are broken up. 1 minute you're a child, the next you're an adult on the run, then you're a teenager, back to a child again, etc., etc. It can be a little overwhelming, but I did find it to be extremely enjoyable overall. Beyond Two Souls features some really interesting gameplay. Players have the ability to swap between Jodie and Aiden on the fly. It's a really interesting mechanic that works well. While Jodie is as restricted as you or I, Aiden is limitless, except for, of course, his link to Jodie. In other words, he can't go too far away from her, or, well, else something very bad happens to Jodie. So as long as he doesn't get too far away from Jodie, he's able to fly through walls, interact with objects, and even take over other characters' bodies. Gameplay feels really intuitive and responsive. While moving around the environments, looking at objects, or just exploring, the controls are highly responsive. On-screen indicators let you know what you can and can't interact with. Press the right analog stick in a certain direction and Jodie will gladly move a chair back and have a seat. While as Aiden, you're given much more freedom, and it's extremely easy to flip switches, push obstacles out of the way, and much more. One other interesting aspect of the game is the no game over screen. If you fail for whatever reason, the story will continue from that point. And it makes things very interesting because Jodie has to live with whatever fate you've trapped her in. As you can tell from the video, this is one fine looking game. There are so many polygons in each character that it's enough to make your head spin. The animations are spectacular and the overall world is just shimmering with detail. From backgrounds to set pieces, Jodie's world feels alive, and that's very important for a game like this. Surprisingly, there's actually a co-op multiplayer mode, which I found kind of interesting. One player controls Jodie, and then the other will take control of Aiden. Now what's neat is that both players, you can't just switch on the fly. Like, in other words, if I'm the second player as Aiden, I can't just, pop in and say like, okay, it's my turn. It's up to the first player to actually switch to me, and then I can go ahead and have my turn. And it's fun, especially if another player isn't so, really good at video games or whatever, but they're curious about this one. I find it it acts like a very easy mechanic to allow another player to try the game out if they're much more of a casual based player. And what I enjoyed was that Quantic Dream took this one step further and actually released an iOS and Android app called Beyond Touch that allows the person with the iPhone or the tablet or whatever to control one of the two characters, and it's super simple. All they have to do is use the touch screen. There's no buttons or anything else for them to worry about. But by default, just so you know, the game does go to the easy mode, so that's something to be aware of. But again, this was all done to sort of try and convince more people to try the game out, and it works exceedingly well. Overall, while I appreciated what Quantic Dream is trying to do, or even what they did with the game, there are some problems. Some chapters are much more fun than others. Playing as a little girl might be powerful to the story, however, the gameplay isn't anywhere near as interesting as when Jodie's on the run, for example. The more options that are open to you, the better the game is. Like, for example, one of the early FBI missions makes the game feel so cool because you're like the ultimate spy. However, you know, just walking around as like, you know, another part of Jodie's life just isn't as interesting at all, and oftentimes it's just plain boring. And choices you make during the game will eventually affect the person Jodie will become. The thing is, it's not as groundbreaking as it sounds, because maybe only 1/10 of those decisions that you make actually carry over through the rest of the game. Oftentimes, you're just forced into a corner when it comes to a certain decision. And it also seems like whatever Aiden does doesn't really pertain to Jodie at all. And it's, I don't know, I just found it very jarring overall. While I enjoyed the combat system, the camera angles just barely ever cooperate. As Jodie punches, kicks, and dodges, what you do is you use the right analog stick to sort of guide her body. It might sound weird, but it's actually intuitive and works well so long as you can see where her body is supposed to go, what the momentum of her body is supposed to be. And sadly, there's just way too many dynamic camera angles that swoop around, and it can be very awkward to know if you're supposed to take the right analog stick and just shove it down, left, right, up, you know, like it gets a little bit cumbersome. The soundtrack can also be problematic. While it's really good quality, music can be powerful, touching, heartbreaking, whatever. The thing is, it sort of always overpowers Ellen Page's performance, and it can get really annoying because she does such an amazing job that you don't need a musical aid to tell you that this is actually, you know, supposed to be sad. We all get it. There's also a false sense of freedom. How is it that I can take over the body of a person that's glowing red but not blue? Why can I interact with, say, the third light but not the first two? These are questions that I constantly ask myself as I was playing as Aiden. Often there's only one solution to a puzzle, even though there may be several logical ways to solve it. And when the game does offer you more freedom, like I said before, you feel enlightened, but unfortunately these moments are few and far between. Ultimately, I was asking myself, am I a spectator or a player? And this is because, well, while walking around the house as a child, for example, you really see how limited Jodie's actions are. In an entire room, she may only be able to interact with one thing. And now this limiting feeling does continue in every single chapter of the game. The difference is that because the pacing isn't exactly the same, that's where, you know, you're not really going to notice that, oh, I can only actually interact with, say, one or two things, because you're just too busy trying to stay alive, and the set pieces are just much, much more interesting. Overall, Beyond Two Souls has a lot of excellent ideas, but the problems are with the way they're executed. Almost everything feels half-baked in the greater scheme of things. Combat works well, but the camera can make it tough to see. Choices are great, but only a few actually matter. Some chapters are a blast to play through, but others are extremely boring. See a trend here? The entire game shines with potential, but there's almost always shortcomings that prevent it from achieving greatness. If you're looking for a game with an intriguing storyline that dares to be different, Beyond Two Souls is indeed such a game. However, if you're looking for the next action blockbuster, this most certainly isn't it. For the full written review, hit up projectcoe.com.
Oh my God. What happened, sweetheart?
told me monsters didn't exist. You were wrong, Mommy, you were